Hey everybody, hope you're well. Here for, what is this? I think this is Wednesday waffle number 4 now. So yeah, 4 waffles. It's a good number 4. There probably won't be one next week. I'm going to be on vacation in Seattle, so taking a week off. I think that's a pretty good workload. Work 4 weeks, have a week off. See if I can get a rotation going on that. Unlikely, huh? Anyways, not a lot to talk about tonight. I had a bunch of stuff that I wanted to tie all together, but it's been kind of a crazy day. Weird lights going off on my vehicle and whatnot. I gotta try to rectify. Plus, it's beautiful out, so I want to get in a skate session. So, just gonna talk about some stuff that I wanted to give a little more thought and consideration to, but hey, it's a waffle, so I'm just gonna waffle about it, and maybe you can pick some nuggets of goodness out of it one way or another. I know it's not fair to throw all that work on you, but throw I shall. Anyways, recently finished reading Joseph Campbell, The Hero with 1,000 Faces. I've known about this book for quite a while now and just gotten around to actually reading it. Figured I'd wait till my dotage to dig into it. Amazing book. Just a lot of storytelling, really. If you enjoy mythology, you just get to go through a lot of different mythologies, and of course he tries to divide them into different categories and how they all connect together in one universal story, which is very enjoyable. But it was kind of cool. I wasn't really expecting this, but in the last chapter, he kind of tries to make some application for the modern age. Of course, this was written in 1949, I believe, so we're well beyond that now, but I think what he had to say still applies. In fact, probably applies more now than it did then. But the final chapter is called The Hero Today. And basically he's kind of talking about what are the odds of our having a hero-like character in the modern age. And he kind of gets into, I think he's kind of focusing more on the political aspects of this, but he mentions something, like he talks about a creative hero. I don't know if that's just creative in the adventurous sense, in the hero's journey, or if it's that the hero would be a creator. I don't know. But I highlighted a couple things in here, so we'll just kind of touch on these briefly. In talking about our modern secular age, he says that within the progressive societies themselves, every last vestige of the ancient human heritage of ritual, morality, and art is in full decay. So he's saying that people they're no longer looking to these higher sort of heavenward values. Roger Scruton, he talked about this a lot as well. I'd say I probably agree with that 60% or so. How necessary that is in the long run, I don't know. But anyways, he's making that argument that we're seeing all the things that would go into a sort of hero myth in a society that would benefit from that and that could even produce such a hero is lacking. But I think it is interesting that you mentioned that even in the arts it is in full decay. He says, today there is no meaning is in the group, none in the world, all is in the individual. That's kind of an interesting one to get into, because I like the idea of the individual, especially when it comes to the creative arts, the sort of individual lone genius. It's sort of that romanticism notion. Oftentimes you see the meme of the painting. I should have looked up to see who did that painting, with the man in the coat standing facing the waves as they crash upon the rocks. And there are certainly throughout history a lot of artists that fit that mold. I do think, though, that when you can get a collective going, where you can have people like that able to cooperate with others, then you can really get some amazing things. And I've got a theory that that's partly why the 60s was such an incredible time for music. And that kind of carried on through the 70s and 80s a bit, even into the 90s. And I'm sure in some small degree even now. But I think the 60s was kind of a perfect time where you had the technology, obviously, to make very vibrant, engaging recorded music, and you could use the studio as an instrument. But it wasn't so cheap or easy to make high quality music that very many individuals could do it on their own. You'd have to be quite successful to basically be able to afford professional recording equipment to even attempt such a thing. So in a sense, people were, if they wanted to create a piece of art or a musical composition, I guess, let's just say a rock band, just keep it simple, wanted to make a rock album, they were reliant on other people because they had to rely on the producer, the engineers running the studio, and their bandmates. It was very difficult for them to just make the whole album on their own. So that would have forced people who sometimes had personalities in conflict, creative differences, to work together. And because of that, you got these groups of people with incredible abilities all working towards more or less the same goal. And when the stars aligned, you got some absolutely incredible albums out of that. Whereas nowadays, I think it's so easy for a person to make things on their own that the incentive isn't there to make the compromises. If you get in a band situation and somebody is doing something that's not quite your cup of tea, rather than trying to work together to make it into a unified vision, chances are I'd be like, well, I'll just go do this on my solo album, kind of a thing. And there's just not that pressure there to work together. And of course, the monetary thing, I think, came into play as well, because there was such huge rewards for coming up with something good. That also incentivized these groups to stick together, whereas normally they would have probably broken up. But once they got the ball rolling, once they had some success, that success would bind them together. They would keep working on and enlarging that success. And nowadays, of course, there's not quite as much success to be had, so that the incentive isn't there as much to push through the difficulties. That there's always going to be interpersonal difficulties and conflicts, and just running any kind of a musical group is just difficult in and of itself, just the logistics of it, I guess. So a couple thoughts on that. But anyways, Joseph Campbell noting that no meaning in the group, none in the world, all is in the individual. And I guess while I'm waffling, on a side note, there are, of course, certain societies that are much less individualistic. I'm not sure if he specified which societies he was referring to. I think he did. Progressive societies, I guess. But like Japan, obviously they're much more collectivist. And I think and other people have commented on this too, why there are less of those lone geniuses there, because it's not the culture to go against the grain like that, as is very much encouraged in sort of Anglosphere for sure. Anyways, then he goes on to get into a little bit more political side of things with regard to the state and whatnot. But here's his, this is actually, the very last, I'll just read the whole last paragraph, but the last sentence is pretty amazing. It says, the modern hero, the modern individual who dares to heed the call and seek the mansion of that presence with whom it is our whole destiny to be atoned, cannot, indeed must not, wait for his community to cast off its slough of pride, fear, rationalized avarice, and sanctified misunderstanding. Live, Nietzsche says, as though the day were here. It is not society that is to guide and save the creative hero, but precisely the reverse. And so every one of us shares the supreme ordeal, carries the cross of the Redeemer, not in the bright moments of his tribe's great victories, but in the silences of his personal despair. I have to have a think on that, about what he means about the personal despair part. But I did think it was interesting that he sums the entire book up basically with this idea that It is not society that's to guide and save the creative hero, but precisely the reverse. The creative hero needs to act today to save society. And we're waiting, right? We're waiting. Anyways, that's all I've got for this week. I'm going to try and do a video on the Rascals, or the Young Rascals, coming up pretty soon. They're one of those bands that have just been sort of overlooked by morons such as myself. And I recently stumbled across one of their albums on vinyl, their Timepiece, their greatest hits, and it blew me away. I had most of the songs on it I had heard a million times before and just had never realized it was the Rascals. I just, some anonymous 60s band, I guess, but that's my failing, so I'm looking forward to delving into that a little bit more coming up here. But anyways, take care.